Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We will be starting in 2 minutes. Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar. We are ready to begin. Today's webinar is eligible for 1 contact hour. Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society of Nursing is accredited as a provider of continuing nursing education by the American Nurses Credentialing Centers Commission on Accreditation. The speakers and planning committee members have disclosed no conflicts of interest. To receive contact hours for this CNE session, participants are required to attend the webcast and complete the evaluation form, which will be emailed to all attendees approximately 1 day after the webcast. This webinar is being recorded and will be available via the Sigma repository within a few business days of recording. Following the panel discussion, we will have a question and answer session. You'll see on your GoToWebinar control panel that you can send a message through the questions feature. This is where you can type in any question you'd like to pose to the presenters. Be sure to hit send so the message makes it to us. To test out this feature, please submit the state or country you are from at this time. Now I would like to introduce our moderator, Dr. Matthew Howard. Dr. Howard serves as the Director of Scholarship at Sigma. He serves as faculty at Northern Kentucky University and works as a staff nurse in the emergency department at Eskenazi Health. His nursing career has taken him from stretcher site nursing to academia and back. His clinical background includes emergency nursing, flight nursing, and trauma nursing in several leadership positions. Now I'll turn the presentation over to him to introduce our presenters.
Thank you, Erica. Today we'll be discussing ways to stay positive and to stay in a positive mood when we are surrounded by negativity that unfortunately we all are around these times. We'll discuss actions nurses can take to express positive enthusiasm while at work, as well as ways to show that positivity. The panelists who will be helping us discuss this today are Dr. Renee Thompson, Dr. Kim Tharp-Barbie, and Sherry Clancy. We'd like to thank our panelists for sharing their time and their expertise with us today. Dr. Renee Thompson is the CEO and founder of Healthy Workforce Institute and works for healthcare organizations to cultivate a professional workforce by addressing workplace bullying and incivility. Dr. Thompson is one of only 26 nurses in the world who have achieved the Certified Speaking Professional designation, and in 2018 was recognized as one of LinkedIn's top 10 voices in healthcare for a contribution to the global online healthcare community. Dr. Kim Tharp-Barbie serves as System Vice President of Norton Healthcare Institute for Nursing and Workforce Outreach. She serves on numerous non-for-profit boards while providing mentorship to nurses seeking clinical and academic progression. She also serves as mentor to University of Louisville female athletes. Her grassroots work includes the National League for Nursing accreditation for the Institute for Nursing at Norton Healthcare to be recognized as a Center for Excellence. Sherry Clancy is a nurse entrepreneur, speaker, and author. She founded Sherry Clancy and Associates, LLC, a coaching firm that utilizes hard science as a catalyst for soft skill development. Sherry has spoken to healthcare leaders across the world, on the US, and on topics including emotional intelligence, patient experience, body language, critical conversations, and resilience. Sherry published her second book, Critical Conversations in Healthcare, Scripts and Techniques for Improving Interpersonal, Interprofessional, and Patient Communications with Sigma. Thank you very much, panelists, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
With that, we'll begin our discussion by discussing ways to remain positive and thrive among the bad and negative attitudes of others in this period of COVID-19. To do that, we'll begin listening from our panelists and hearing from the nurses that they have spoken with and that they have worked with. So, what are you seeing and what are you hearing from nurses in this time?
Well, and I'll start. I have been talking with frontline nurses and their leaders over the last 8 weeks who are really dealing with this crisis, but it's not really from the, do we have enough PPE or how many ICU beds do we need? I mean, they've been reaching out, asking for help and wanting to talk about how to deal with the behaviors that they're seeing among their coworkers, or the leaders are reaching out and saying, and we know this in a crisis situation, we see the best in people, but we're seeing the worst too. And I think out there on social media, what everybody is, saying out there is that nurses are heroes and our healthcare professionals are heroes, and they really are. But they don't know that there's also this cloud of negativity that's happening in our organizations, and they're reaching out asking for help. So things like, we talk a lot about fear. I mean, not only are these nurses leaving the safety of their homes, they're going into a place every day that's putting them at risk. And when somebody is really faced with so much fear and anxiety, it shows up sometimes in disruptive behaviors and this cloud of negativity. And they're asking how to deal with it, whether you're a frontline nurse who's taking care of these patients, or maybe you're in a surgery center and you just got furloughed because you had to close. There's a lot of negative emotions and behaviors out there right now.
And I'll add to that, Renee. I agree. I see a lot of what Talbot and Dean kind of coined from Harvard is moral injury, right? So it's about you being subjective to, like to your point, the bad behaviors, and just subjected and seeing and present of uncertainty and crisis. And again, you're seeing the good of the good, right? These informal leaders are stepping up, and sometimes we're seeing some behaviors that we're like, wasn't expecting that. So how do you deal with that, and how do you kind of work through that? And it's a lot of resiliency. It's a lot of questions. It's a lot of, to your point, fear. I echo that. It's just so many different issues and emotions.
Yeah. I would just add that I've kind of put mine on a bell curve, because I've seen different behaviors from the beginning to that midpoint and to the present time. And early on, I think I was most surprised by the number of nurses that just wanted to be part of this. Nurses that just stepped up and said, I don't want to be in an office. I want to be on the front line. I think I can help and I can do more. And with my role being in charge of education for a large 5-facility system, I have been at command center, and my team has been in the trenches. And so I think for me, early on, it was interesting to see the people that stepped up, and then to also see the people that stepped back. So as I called on retiring nurses that are PRN for us, right, that are always folks that step up, just kind of said, you know what, I think it's time for me to step back. And I think with that, as we had resource challenges early on, we saw a lot of the fear and a lot of the PPE questions and a lot of, different PPE, different places, and just fear of not knowing what we didn't know. I think at the midpoint, we began to see a little bit more exhaustion and frustration. The policies, the procedures, the protocols were moving targets every single day, and we just couldn't hardly keep up. We've been fortunate in the Kentuckiana region, and we finally had a little bit of a tapering off. And it seems like in the last few weeks, last couple of weeks, we've been able to redeploy some more expertise to the bedside. We've been able to give some folks a chance to recuperate a little bit and really just honor their ability to do some more self-care. So things are beginning to look a little better until today. We had another spike in the state of Kentucky, but I kind of look at it at that bell curve, and we've seen all different phases of behaviors and responses to the negativity, as you say, Dr. Thompson.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing this sort of bell curve of emotions. I've had some of my clients who, one of them said, they're anticipating that we're going to need 140 ICU beds, and we only have 70. And they spend weeks preparing and getting all of these like shut down units reopened just to hold them. And then the most they've had in any one day was 12 patients. Or a pediatric hospital who said they were actually learning how to prepare to care for adults. Talk about fear. Like, if you work with adults, you don't want to take care of kids. And if you work with kids, don't give me an adult. Mm-hmm. And I think there is a lot of that fear of the unknown and changes happening so frequently. That was the one thing that a lot of the leaders actually said to me. I feel so bad because I huddle with my team and I tell them this one thing that we're going to do or some process. And then an hour later, I come back and I have to tell them, scratch that, we're doing something else. And there was a piece of advice that I gave them, and I think it's still relevant today, is that if you're in a leadership role, or maybe you're a charge nurse and you have to convey information, you first start by saying that we know that as things change, we get new information. That means we have to change what we do here. And you just have to expect that what I tell you right now might change in an hour. And here's the key. And I need you to trust that we are making decisions based on the information we have right now, based on what's best for you and best for our patients. So it's like, expect that it's going to change. And that, I think, alleviates some of that, okay, we're just going to expect it, instead of feeling like we're blindsided all the time by, oh, what? N95 always, now it's not. Now it's with this type of patient. I mean, it's just, yeah, it can be overwhelming.
It is. And to add to that level of complexity is the fear of, do I even have a job tomorrow? What if I'm working in a clinic, right? The furloughs, and that adds to that other level of fear of, okay, there's one that, okay, I'm subjecting myself and my family, and then there's the other fear of, do I even have an option?
Right.
Yeah. So.
I think you said it well. I had made some notes earlier and was just thinking about how stable and trustworthy leadership during crisis makes for a smoother operational management and transitioning to what our new normals may or may not be. I mean, we don't know what our new normal is going to be, but I do think that stable, trustworthy leadership is imperative to what those new normals are going to look like for all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's going to test all of our ability to be flexible, adaptable, open to change, opening to things that perhaps we were so regimented with, right? Structure, we all like structure. And now, I mean, I have 3 kids at home in high school that they're doing online school, and we're all trying to find that balance, if you will. I use that word lightly, but yeah, it adds to the everyday, oh, what are we facing with today? It changes minute by minute.
And you know, Sherry, I think that's a good point that you're making too. And it's one of, I think, the strategies is we tend to be thinking about, if they're making these changes now, what's going to happen tomorrow, and how about next week and next month, and this might go on for 17 more years, and people just, they go down that path. And I try to remind people, focus on what you can control today. Today we're okay. Today we have what we need, and it's easy to go down that path of worry of what the future is going to bring. And I'm not saying stick your head in the sand and don't take a peek. However, especially when you're on the front line, that's what you got to focus on, that patient right now. And I think by doing that, it really helps you to feel some sense of control over your life in an uncontrollable world right now.
Yeah, I agree. It goes back to a lot of the research that I do on the power of gratitude. A great study came out a couple years ago that they called it the gratitude challenge, 21 days. So for 21 days, you can write even in your iPhone, wherever you're at. If you're home, that's great, piece of paper sign. But they say to write down 3 things that you're most grateful for every day for 21 days. After that 21th day, it helps to reframe your brain to see more of that positive than going down that rabbit hole, as Dr. Thompson was talking about, that you see just negative. It does help you to reframe and reset and feel a little bit more rejuvenated in these times of crises. And I know we'll go through all more strategies, but I just wanted to touch on that because power of gratitude, it sounds so easy and it is hard. It is a challenge to remember to write it down.
Right here, every morning, three things I'm grateful for.
Me too. I was grateful this morning to wash my hands because I thought about how many times, again, hearing people that they didn't have hand sanitizers or people are actually stealing the hand sanitizers. I'm trying to get the soap and water and I'm just washing my hands. Going, I am so grateful. It's the little things, like our big things, as we shared earlier.
I agree. Okay, so it looks like it's time for our first poll question. I'm going to put that up for us. All right. Okay. They able to see the results?
Yes.
All right. So it looks like 29% are from a healthcare organization and direct patient care, 15 in an administrative capacity, 19% working with students who directly work with patients, and 2% in administrative capacity, and 34% in that other capacity. All right. Well, thank you very much for that. It does give us a little bit of information in terms of how we want to, what kind of information we want to give back to you guys. So we should definitely realize, of course, the fact that everyone right now, especially right now, of course, is under a tremendous amount of stress right these days, whether it's at home, whether it's at school, whether it's at work, etc., wherever we are. But what are people in healthcare dealing with that may increase their stress levels that others may not necessarily realize, or maybe are unique to healthcare leaders?
Yes, I'll take that one. So, I believe that the role of the caregiver itself is unique because most of us are servant leaders and we're called to care. Caring is the essence of nursing. And I think because we're called to care for others, we're not really good at taking care of ourselves during normal circumstances, if you will. And then you couple this crisis with the fact that we tend to be givers, we're fixers, we don't know how to say no. Then you're at even more of a loss to provide self-care. It's really interesting to me. I know that the other panelists do a lot of teaching and a lot of lecturing, and it just never ceases to amaze me whether I'm in a room with 500 or 50, and I ask the folks in the room, how many of you can show me by a raise of hands that you take great care of yourselves? It's not uncommon to not have one hand in the room go up when I'm talking to nurses or caregivers, and it's really a sad state of affairs. And then you take that with working all day long under duress, maybe in scarcity. We tend to, and we'll talk about that with strategies, how to maybe focus more on sufficiencies than scarcities. But right now there are scarcities. And then we go home and we still have those same things to deal with that others that aren't healthcare providers have to deal with, like perhaps our children need homeschooling, or we have aging parents to care for, or we still need to prepare meals, or maybe we're a single parent, or we have animals to care for, but we're challenged and there's just not enough gas in the tank. So I think we struggle during normal times to take care of ourselves. So I think that's what's most unique, is now we're even more challenged to provide self-care, and you can't take care of others if you can't take care of yourselves.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm worried that right now we're in crisis mode, especially the ones who are on the front line. I talked to a leader 2 weeks ago. She has worked 7 weeks in a row. Every single day she's been at the hospital. I'm like, oh my gosh, like you cannot keep up like that. But we're in crisis mode and we do it. But what's going to happen is I'm concerned about the after effects of this. And if we don't start doing and taking actions now, the after effects are going to be devastating, I think, to our profession and to overall healthcare. And, you know, I can't help but laugh sometimes, though, when I think about all of the things that are out there, again, on social media about people being so bored at home that they're coming up with these bizarre games and the haircut memes. And quite honestly, they're funny and I laugh. But I know the people on the front line right now, they wish they were bored. There's no boredom because they're running at full steam ahead. And again, your point is so well taken. How many of us actually would raise our hand and say we're taking care of ourselves, especially now in this crisis? I think it's a big concern.
I think we have to also think about the guilt that might be unique for us. So guilt because we can't provide those great human interactions when we have goggles and masks and gloves and gowns. You know, guilt when we don't have the resources that we necessarily need to provide the safe care that we would like. And I think that's not true in maybe most cases, but we have that caregiver guilt that we can't do enough. We can't be there enough. We can't be present enough. And then we go home and we feel guilty all over again because we can't be enough or do enough when we get home.
Or even if you're working from home, or even like myself, I think of, Sherry, we're nurses. When this all happened, I actually said to my husband, I feel guilty right now that my colleagues are out there putting themselves at risk and I'm in the safety of my home. And that's another negative emotion that more of us are feeling and people don't realize it. I mean, I took an oath. How many of us took an oath? And even if you're still in the hospital, but you're being sort of forced to work from home and you know your colleagues are putting their lives at risk. I mean, talk about, emotion. Like guilt is a powerful negative emotion.
And that's a good point. Sherry or Renee, could you guys give us a little bit of more information on how are you dealing with that guilt? Because I do know that is something that, as I have talked to several nurses, they do feel that guilt that they're not there helping, right? They're not in a hospital. That's just not their setting. That's not their part that they're playing right now in the area of healthcare. But what are some ways they can get over, if you will, that guilt and feel they can still do something?
I don't know if it's even getting over, but I have to say from the research that I'm doing and trying to talk with people is, first of all, say you're not alone and it's okay, and to recognize it and to understand that I have to work through this, and it's not about winning the race or getting there. It's about dealing with your emotion, being aware of your emotion, and then again finding your resources, which we'll talk about some strategies and such. But I think the biggest thing is just to know that you're not alone, because I think a lot of us are afraid to admit it.
Yeah, and it's a really good point, and trying to remind people that even though, and we've been saying this, even though we're not physically with you, we are with you. And from a company perspective, my company is all about addressing bullying and incivility. I am not going to focus on that during the crisis. I mean, and we as a company had to sit back and say, okay, what can we do? And we just completely turned everything around and thought we can support them. So we did a 30 days of kindness, coping, and caring initiative. And we reached out to all our communities and our clients and the frontline and the leaders and just made ourselves available to them and I almost felt sometimes like we were hitting them over the heads with positive messages and support. And anybody can do that virtually. Anybody can do that. It doesn't require you to be on site. So I think each one of us can take a look at, I may not be next to you in isolation, gown and everything, but there are some things that I can do to support you. Even if it's just texting somebody to say, I care about you, call me if you need me, I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think the other thing that may be unique for our profession is that a third of us are between the ages of 50 and 64. So that in itself presents a unique challenge for our workforce. And a number of us have comorbidities to boot. So again, it just goes back to the importance of self-care, because we ourselves are a high-risk professional group today.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we don't take that moment out. Sometimes when I'm talking to people, I'll do the moment of tease, and I'll do it with you right now. How many times do any of us wake up, as soon as you get up in the morning, you go into the bathroom and you look in the mirror and you go, wow, I'm beautiful. You're like, all right, oh my God, right. So, but that's what we do. We beat ourselves up. It's like, how do we promote that positivity? So one of the things that I do, even for my own kids, is I'll put post-it notes, but just positive affirmations, such as, I am strong. I can do this. I will have a great day. Like, just those small little pieces, again, from that guilt standpoint, when you find yourself going down that rabbit hole and spinning down, take a moment. I will, I am, I can. Simple things can actually really, transform the way you look at things and see more of that positive.
So it is time for our second poll question real quick for everyone. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a good portion of you, at least, that are caring for COVID suspected or COVID positive patients, and I will admit that does definitely put a different spin, on how you're working and what you're doing. So as we're going through this, please don't forget to please put in your questions in the question feature. If you do have questions for us that we'll start answering towards the end, please feel free to put as many of those as you want to in there. My next question, I'm gonna push this one over to Renee, if you will. What could you say to someone in the moment who is acting out? What do you mean by acting out, and what kind of things can you say to people like that?
Yeah, it's so funny. It's probably one of the most common questions that I've been getting from people is like, I get it, everybody's scared and angry, but I cannot take this person anymore because they're nitpicking and they're petty. And and some of the examples that I've heard are people are looking at, oh, how come I had to change my schedule? He didn't have to change his schedule. Or how come I got pulled in this one? On and on and on. In any situation, especially when there's something happening in your organization, and for us right now, it's in the world. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People are going to be reactive, and they may act out in ways that are more negative than they would normally act out. I always say nobody's on their best behavior when they're under a lot of stress. So it's easy to just ignore it, justify it, say, yeah, I get it, and not address it. And that's probably the worst thing that you can do. Instead, and I'm big on scripting, is to look at that person and say, look, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. It's not okay to be mean, or it's not okay to be cruel. And I gave this one script to a leader who reached out because she had somebody who was very nitpicky and petty and questioning everything. And I said, look this person in the eye, and this works with your coworker, this works with anyone, and just say, look, neither you nor I have any extra energy to spend today on nitpicking, pettiness, arguing, okay? Not today. So it's addressing it, and I think it's, you can say to somebody, look, I understand you're frustrated. I understand you're afraid. But it's never a justification to be cruel or mean to someone. We don't have time for that today. And can I count on you? I like to throw that one in. Can I count on you to step up and be a professional and to communicate with respect, despite the fact that you're going through this?
What are some effects that negative attitudes can have in the workplace environment, Sherry?
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of all those things Renee was just saying, like, well, what does that really do to you internally? So, we know that, stress has a negative connotation, right? We think of stress and, oh, it's negative. So but we do know that some stress is positive, right? It keeps us safe, keeps us motivated, keeps us going from day to day. But the problem is the tipping point when the stress becomes overbearing and you're hearing the same negativity and you feel like you're being bullied or demeaned in healthcare, whatever that may be. But it's not just physical, it's not just emotional, it's also mental and spiritual. So from high blood pressure we see to depression to fatigue, insomnia. There's so many different facets that it's affecting in our health. And again, that's why we've got to stand up for ourselves and be our best advocate in trying to do strategies that work for us. I mean, if there was a one size fits all, trust me, I would have tried to innovate to help take the pressure off of a lot of people. But it is truly something where, again, you have to assess it and you have to look at your triggers and find out what works for you. So as you heard earlier, some people like to cuddle with their pets, or some people like to decompress with music. Whatever it is that you find soothing is the right thing for you. Because again, we can't control all those adversities and those negative things that people say to us and how they treat us, but we can control the way we react to it. And sometimes it's a matter of saying, I'm not going to tolerate this. And you can say exactly the scripting. And Renee, I know you have lots of those on your website, and they're fantastic. But at some point too, you gotta say it, and if they take it, great, and if not, you gotta be okay with keeping your head up and saying, okay, I will. Again, go back to those positive affirmations. It's hard. It's hard to do, but you've got to practice. It's the journey.
Mm-hmm. I would just add, outside of the psychological and the physical distress, we know that people become disengaged, and then bottom line, people quit. And that's what's really concerning me right now, is while we have more people stepping up, we also have people that are walking away, people that are just saying enough. And so I think, again, back to Renee's point, I hear a lot of Martha Griffin in you. I'm an old Martha Griffin fan from way back. And so one of the things that I script our new grads to say is, this isn't working for me. Your behavior is not working for me. And I think when you can say to someone, your behavior is unacceptable and it's not working for me, I'm not telling you that you're necessarily broken. I'm just saying I'm not going to put up with it any longer, because we know if we acquiesce, the bullying just gets worse. So I think just to empower new grads and to empower all nurses that are working in the trenches right now in crisis, to just say, hey, what's going on today? We have to go in psych nurse mode almost and say, what's up with you today? Or what's going on? Or how can I help? Or do you need something? I think the greatest thing that my boss and that our CEO has done is to remind his leaders every single day, just to say, do you have what you need? Or can I help? Or how can I help? And so we have to almost resort back to being those, those pseudo psych nurses, but we have to also make sure that we're not tolerating bad behavior. And I think to say, this isn't working for me is a really nice way to do that.
And I think something to add on to that, Kim, is something that we don't always think about. We're having a conversation right now about what if somebody's being really disrespectful to me, but more often people are witnessing other people being cruel to, could be a nurse being really cruel to somebody in a supportive role, physician being cruel to a nurse, experienced nurse, new nurse, student nurse. Yes. And I always say the number one most powerful strategy or intervention to stop the cycle of bullying is for the witness to speak up. Absolutely. And so maybe you're standing there and you're witnessing somebody else behaving in a way that's incredibly disrespectful. And I always recommend, because you get really uncomfortable. I don't know if I should say something. What do I do? What if they turn around and retaliate against me? But just to even say time out, or, whoa. The way you're talking to her is not okay, or, time out, not here, not now, just to break that cycle. And then I think, to your point, especially if someone doesn't usually behave that way, and this is their stress response, is to identify the behavior, like, it's not okay the way you're acting right now, what you just said was really inappropriate, whatever that is, then pull them aside and say, are you okay? I've never seen you act like this. Do you want to talk about it? But it's addressing it, like kind of intervening, but then stepping back and say, well, let's talk about this. And I think that could be helpful to that person too.
I agree. I use the phrase from the Institute of Healthcare Improvement, and instead of saying no, well, what's the matter with you? What's going on? It's what matters to you.
Mhm.
What matters to you right now? And when you get them to again do an open-ended conversation, sometimes they will kind of escalate, and then they get to more of a wow, someone's here to really listen to me. Another quick thing I wanted to bring up was I was reading from JAMA, the Journal of American Medical Association. And in April, they came out with this great tidbit on requests from healthcare professionals during this COVID. What do people want? And it's really 5 things. Staff, leaders, they want to be heard. They want to be protected, right? So we are here, again, talking about letting people kind of vent, and then again, putting your boundaries up, right? Protecting them, giving them the equipment that they need, preparing them, educating them, remembering how to put on the bunny suit, the donning the masks and all those good things, supporting them, again, giving them outlets, giving them resources, and finally caring for them, being holistic about it, understanding that people are going to have bad days and they're going to drop and they might cry, and just putting your hand on their shoulder or their arm to say, I'm here with you, whether we're right there or we're virtual. Just knowing that you're not alone can speak volumes. So I wanted to share that bit. I really thought that was pretty powerful.
Oh, I definitely agree. I definitely agree. And that actually helps to lead us right into our last poll question for the evening.
Mhm.
Nice.
Oh, that's so refreshing.
Absolutely.
Renee, do you have any comments for us on that one?
Oh, yes. Throughout the last 6 to 8 weeks, talking with a lot of people, I have seen that there are 2 camps. One is, they pull together and we're a team and we got this, and everybody puts aside their grudges, any issues that they have with each other, and they come together. And then the other camp, they fall apart. What I am seeing is true to what we're seeing here with the audience, is that more people are pulling together. And this is what I want you to do. First of all, I've seen this in every single organization that I've done work with, every single department that is struggling with behavior. When there's a crisis, like labor and delivery, a mom is in crisis and everybody has to get in there and help. Oh, everybody puts aside their grudges and they come together as a team to save those lives. But then it's after that people fall apart and they start the nitpicking and the pettiness. So we want to make sure that if your team pulled together throughout this crisis, that you stay together when it's over. And here's something that I want you to do as a group. You got to get together, and you got to do this over time too. It can't just be one time. You need to be asking the questions. What did we do? What specifically were the behaviors that we displayed as a team that helped us to pull together? Because you want to get super clear on what those are so that you can repeat them. So I'll give you one example. There was, right when this all hit, one of my leaders I was working with, she told me that when they were closing the schools, there was an older nurse who was caring for her grandchildren and was sort of really stressed about the fact that how was she going to, be home for her kids? She had to work. 2 younger nurses got together with her and said, okay, wait, what day do you have to be there for them? Oh, I can work your shift. And how about you work this shift? Because they were talking about how, so they took a look at, first of all, making decisions based on what was best for their patients first, but then what was best for each other. And they supported each other. You want to identify that, reinforce that, rinse and repeat that. If your department fell apart, you need to do a root cause analysis, like why did we fall apart? So that we can maybe take a look at making sure that in a similar situation, in a minor crisis, that doesn't repeat itself, and address those issues.
Yeah, I would just ditto that. Certainly what I've seen is most people have done the right thing and things that would lift them up and to enhance their own spirituality. You know, you have those few that are doing things maybe to be noticed or maybe to increase their power base. But I'm so pleased to say that within our organization, our CEO has done a really nice job in leading every day. And I know maybe a lot of CEOs are doing this, but with daily communications, with videos, and with access to chaplains 24/7, and with access to hotlines and PPE questions, and with access for emotional support. And, you know, we brought food in, and it's all those little things, but also just what we call the Norton recognition, just to recognize everyone from the custodial support folks in environmental services to the folks that are cleaning, you know, our offices, or again, dropping off food to the folks that are in the trenches. But I just think, again, to have that person that's steady and trustworthy and promoting stability has really helped a lot with decreasing the negativity.
And I just like to add 2 simple words that I hope every single person that's listening to this will add to their conversation tomorrow. And those 2 words are thank you. Simply thanking someone and being very intentional about it increases your dopamine, right? That feel-good hormone. It also does it for everyone else. And studies show it helps with sleep, helps with you having better eating choices, your overall happiness, and workplace satisfaction. So thank you.
Thank you.
So what are some other strategies that nurses can employ to be able to spread that positivity, such as the thank you, despite feeling negative that they might be feeling in that particular environment?
Take a breath. I'm so serious. A deep breath. It helps to reset. It puts oxygen up to the head so that you get more blood flow and you're able to make more rational, logical decisions than feeling all tight. Because what do we do when we're stressed? We hold our shoulders up. So if everyone here on the call just dropped your shoulders, like literally just drop your shoulders, you're elongating your neck and you're feeling, maybe you might feel a little crackle or a crimp right there, and that's okay. But that would be one of my biggest, again, tips and strategies when you put that hand. I do platform patient satisfaction, patient experience, and I always tell my caregivers, I call everybody in healthcare a caregiver because that's what you're doing. When you put your hand on that door to open the door, take a breath, people. We know, right? We can feel attitude. We can feel presence. When you take that breath, put your hand on the door handle to open up to go into the patient room, you appear more refreshed, which makes the patients more relaxed.
Renee, what are your thoughts?
I think mindset definitely does influence behavior. So I think, Sherry, you're absolutely right. Whatever it is that you have to do to center yourself, to focus, and just to be more on, if you will. But I kind of want to take this down another path as well, because one of the things that we figured out early on was that sometimes we were making this more difficult than it needed to be. For example, when we had scarcity of PPE, we forgot how to critical think. You know, for example, did we really need 3 people to go into that room? So I love that you said take a breath, because what we really try to encourage people to do is don't forget all of those common sense skills that you've acquired. Don't forget how to critical think and say, wait a minute, before I garb 3 people up to go into that room, do 3 of us really need to even go into that room? So just trying to take a breath, rethink, look at different, care models, be a little bit more creative. But then on the flip side of that, what we can do personally around just scripture and our faith. And I'm, again, very fortunate because we come from a faith-based organization where everything every day is about, just keep the faith and stay safe. That's our motto, is keep the faith and stay safe. So whatever it is that you have to do from a scripture perspective to bring yourself that strength to deep breathe and to get through your day and to be able to help and serve others.
Yeah, I know a lot of organizations, they're including prayer in their daily huddles, prayers at the beginning of the shift, the end of the shift, and I think they can be very powerful, whether, it's not really about religion, it's about just being prayerful and just asking for guidance to help you to get through that next shift. And there's something else that I want to add to this, and that is starting with an understanding that we're influenced by everything we read, we see, we hear. And I know myself, there are people in my family, in my community, some of my friends that are constantly watching all of the news and all of this negativity. And they say just 3 minutes of negative news in the morning can increase your chances of having a bad day by 27%. And so, and I know myself, like when this all happened, I mean, I have a company that requires me to be in front of a lot of people and get on airplanes. My dad's like, you're going to have to close your company. We're going to have a depression. And I actually had a little mini panic attack. Then I'm like, okay, wait a minute. And from there, what I did was I started setting boundaries and limiting the amount of negative exposure that I allowed myself to experience. And it's not sticking your head in the sand. It's being very mindful how much negativity you're going to allow yourself to experience. So here's one tip. Please, on your way into work, do not listen to the news. Listen to music that you like that makes you feel good. How about just silence, okay? And maybe say some prayers in your car. But avoid the news on your way to work and avoid the news on your way home from work, because on your way home, you want to center yourself so that if you're actually able to be with your family, you're present with your family. So limit your exposure to negative news and negative people, and do then the opposite. Spend more time watching inspiring videos. Like seriously, now's the time to watch funny cat videos. It's okay. I actually encourage it. And some of those memes are hysterical and they make me laugh. But spend more time with positive people, and the more you can, talk about the good things that are happening. We're discharging patients now more than we're admitting patients with COVID-19, and they don't usually like to throw that on the news. So it's out there though. Go find it.
Yeah, just to wrap up, I would say mindfulness and mindful, intentional practice of meditation. Just even taking a moment, looking around right now. I bet you don't even know that you had that vase behind you, or this picture that was so old that you don't even know, because we're so, fast forward mindset of anxiety, or we're depressed thinking about what we did or didn't do. To be present and mindful is huge in resetting and reframing the positivity.
And a lot of these things sound easy, sound simple, but we have to take the time to do them, right? Yep. We actually have to think about having to do that because of the stressful environment that we're in. So one of the first questions that we have from the audience, and I think, Kim, you kind of started to talk about this just a little bit earlier. What advice would you give to new grads that will start working in this environment soon?
I think that's a great question. And we have 174 starting in June, and that's actually part of my role. And so one of the things that we've recently done is we've moved everything virtual, and we've put a pre-test in place, or a pre-screening, if you will, so that we know exactly where they are. Someone said earlier, meet someone where they are. It's so important right now that we meet our new grads where they are. We understand where they have deficits and where they're totally competent or they feel confident to proceed. So my advice would be for them to do the same thing that Sherry said, take a deep breath, rely on your preceptor, we have lead educators at our place. Most people have an education department, but just be really aware of self-awareness. Just be aware of how you're feeling, any of your fears. Focus more on what you know and be confident than what you don't know, because whatever you don't know, you're going to have some great resources. You're going to have people to ask. So I would just say breathe, take it one day at a time, and trust, and know that that there are people there to help you, and don't be afraid to ask for help. That would be my number one thing, because we're not great at asking for help. Nurses think that we can just do it all, fix it all, and we don't like to be, we don't like to seek help. So that would be my number one piece of advice, is just don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah.
And if I could tag on to that, I would say for every new grad to do just a bit of self-reflection and think about after their day, what was that good day too? I think it was Renee that pointed out, be very intentional, very specific on what was it. So when you crystallize it, it becomes more of a habit than more of something that is so far-fetched that you're reaching for. It just becomes part of your daily behavior. So think about what would make a good day. What was those behaviors, and what were you proud of? Again, be intentional.
Yeah. Definitely.
That journal would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Another question. How do you find time to give to others when you may be caring for outside of the clinical setting, at home or something like that? Because as a nurse, we're always expected to kind of put our feelings aside, right? Just to do the job. And I know as an emergency department nurse, that was one of the things I was taught initially, right? Was you don't leave your feelings at the door because you've got to take care of this particular patient. You got to take care of these people. You can't get that emotionally involved. How do we help nurses not to have to do that?
I think it's part of being empathetic and putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and forgiving yourself. Because it sounds right there almost like somebody's like, oh, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. But what are you doing? Again, reframing your brain to think about what you are doing that's positive. Even thanking someone mentally in your head, again, will stimulate those good hormones, the dopamine, the epinephrine, all those good things. We have to be less, I think, what's the word I'm looking for? Less negative on ourselves, because I think, to your point, that's what we do. It's always, we're not enough. And sometimes we need to be grateful and just forgiving in our own day-to-day.
And I will add just a little bit to that, because I'm not really sure that this answers the viewer's question, but I think just the nature of what we do as nurses puts us at risk for always feeling like we've not done enough, that we can't help everyone. I think just having that service mindset that we are there to serve. I always say we're inconvenienced every day we come into work, because the whole nature of what we do as nurses is to serve other people, and many times these people are strangers. So I think it's recognizing that you're probably going to have a part of that. The problem is when you let that define who you are and you beat yourself up, like Sherry was saying. But it's just to say, you know what, when I leave work, I probably could have done more, but I did the best that I could today. And tomorrow I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to do the best that I can tomorrow, because that's all we can do is our very best. I absolutely will tell you there were days when I would leave work and I would think, and even days now in what I do, that I didn't do my best today. And so I'm like, okay, if so tomorrow, what could I do better? So again, like Sherry said, it's not beating yourself up, but just identifying, I'm probably going to have some of those days that I'm not so great, and that's okay, but it's what I do the next day that counts.
I want to take off on something that Matt said, because I think that at least I know my generation was raised to not show fear and pain. But I think that Kouzes and Posner's work has taught us that it's okay for us to let ourselves be vulnerable. And I tell nurses every day, we're all leaders. I'll ask nurses, in class, how many of you are leaders? And maybe 20% will raise their hands if they have a formal leadership title. And I'll tell them, no, you're all leaders, and you all lead very important patient care initiatives, life-changing initiatives every day. But because you're leaders, it's okay to let yourself be vulnerable. Sometimes we have more strength because we're sharing our vulnerabilities. And I think that patients and those that we work with appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. A lot of work was done by Dr. Brene Brown. She's one of the most downloaded YouTubes. Yes, and she talks about the strength of shame and vulnerability. And as somebody pointed out earlier, when you say, can you help me? When you just simply say, can you help me? As much as there's confrontation or such, by nature, we tend to, okay. And you might just give a little bit more than you normally would, but just simply asking is huge.
I would definitely agree with that one. One more question we have is, I'm a travel nurse who went to another state to help out. Thank you, by the way, for doing those kind of things. But now that I'm here, it's very stressful. Mm-hmm. The nurses are great and helpful, but I feel like a fish out of water. I get a different type of stress, right? How do I handle this kind of a situation?
Wow. I was talking to one of my leaders who said, it's like a war zone here in the hospital. Literally, the military is here. I mean, it's bad. And, and everybody's out there talking about how, I live in Tampa, Florida, and there was a whole group of nurses from this area that flew up to New York City to help when this all happened. And, even though you're being recognized as the heroes there, and there's a lot of, like we were saying before, food, and people are really supporting us, it still can feel very isolating, I'm sure, especially now you're in all these isolation gowns. It's even more isolating, and you don't have that human connection. And so I don't know if this will help, but even just talking to someone who knows exactly what you're going through, if you're a travel nurse, I'm sure there are other travel nurses right now who are going through the same thing. And just to be able to connect with somebody and name what's happening with you, like, this is what I'm feeling right now. I feel isolated. I feel this, I feel that. Do you feel that too? And I think just to get some validation that that's normal to feel that way, I think can be incredibly powerful, that you're not the only one feeling like this, that many people are feeling the exact same way. It's kind of like, okay, I'm not the only one. And then, I think that'll help you to lessen that, but I don't think that'll completely go away. I don't think there's anything that'll completely make that go away until this crisis is over and you can go back home.
I really appreciate that question, and made a mental note to get into work this week and figure out what's happening with our traveling nurses, because they do need that support. And again, I think that we have a professional and ethical responsibility to make sure that all of our employees get what they need. And I could definitely see that this would be a time when they would have a different set of needs. The other thing I'd just like to mention along those same lines is just the importance of mental preparedness. And I don't know how many of us found ourselves with a good, strong mental preparedness coming into this, but I'm really hoping that this becomes a formal part of nursing school curriculum now. I'd really like to see academicians and practitioners really join together to say, what have we learned from this? And now what can we lift out of this and jointly put into nursing curriculum so that it becomes a part of what we do every day and it's not always crisis oriented.
Yeah, and I think I'm hearing a lot on, just self-confidence, right? As a travel nurse, you are the subject matter expert. You come in with that level of confidence and tell yourself that more than anybody else. It's not like you have to know it all and do everything yourself. Ask for help, but come in with that confidence. And then also, I think it speaks to our profession's duty to help build strong mentorship programs. Aligning yourself with a mentor, somebody that's not your preceptor, right? Somebody that you can say, hey, I haven't done an IV, or you're something you're really comfortable with sharing, that you can do that without feeling like you're being marginalized or graded or on some competency assessment form. You need just an outlet. So I think mentorship can really be developed better.
It could be virtual. We're working on that model right now. So maybe that's what that traveler nurse does. Call a friend first and foremost. Call a friend, or call that virtual preceptor. Call that person that was a part of your journey 5 years ago that always made you feel better. But I think we can't underestimate the importance of just reaching out to people that make us feel better during these horrific times.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. All right. Thank you very much to our panelists for your information, for the conversation. It was very helpful, I think, for all of us to kind of get that information and to get the ability to know that we can do some of these things and we can take care of those things. And also a big thank you to our Sigma team for your assistance with setting up this discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to our presenters today for all the great information. Sigma is grateful to you that you took the time to share with the audience and look forward to hearing from you in the future. As a reminder to our attendees, please submit the state or country you are from in the questions feature. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. Be sure to check out Sigma's upcoming webinars, podcasts, and resources to support you and your colleagues at sigmanursing.org. Also, previously recorded webinars and podcasts are freely available on the Sigma repository. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.